Okay, let's unpack this. Today, we're doing a deep dive into one of those really fascinating textual puzzles you find in religious scholarship. We're looking at the Quranic creation narrative, specifically this apparent, conflict in the timelines given for creation.
Yes, it's a well-known point. A critical discussion within tafsir, which is Quranic exegesis. Because, see, throughout the Quran, the creation of the heavens and the earth is pretty consistently described as taking place in 6 days.
Sitati ayam.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Sitati ayam. You find that clearly stated in several surahs, chapter 7, verse 54, chapter 10, verse 3, and others.
Right. Very consistent.
But then you have this one passage, Surah Fusilat, which just goes into quite a bit of detail. And if you just read it sort of sequentially, it seems to add up to 8 days.
And that difference, that 8 versus 6, that's the core of our mission today, isn't it? We want to figure out how classical Islamic scholarship handled this, what the theological message is behind it all, and maybe touch on how modern critics and scientists see it too.
Precisely. The whole puzzle really hinges on Surah Fusilat, specifically verses 9 through 12. If you just take them as a straightforward chronological list, the math seems pretty simple.
Yeah, let's lay out that math, the calculation that, leads people to say 8 days. The passage seems to break creation down. So, first stage, creating the earth itself. How long?
2 days for 41.9 is clear on that.
Okay, 2 days for the earth. Then there's the second stage, provisioning the earth. Putting down mountains, decreeing sustenance, all that foundational stuff.
Right, and the text says that took 4 days. That's verse 41.0.
2 days, then 4 days. And finally, the third stage mentioned is creating the heavens.
The 7 heavens, yes. And that's another 2 days according to verse 41.12.
So if you just add those up, 2 plus 4 plus 2.
You get 8. 8 days. And that's the apparent contradiction. If the Quran says 6 days everywhere else, why does this detailed section seem to demand 8?
This is where it gets really interesting, because as you said, it's a known issue, but the vast majority of scholars, classical and modern, actually argue there's no contradiction at all.
None whatsoever. That's the remarkable scholarly consensus. And they resolve it through a key concept: overlapping periods.
Overlapping periods, meaning not just adding them up one after the other.
Exactly. It's about understanding the time frames as nested or cumulative rather than strictly sequential. The crucial interpretive step is seeing that the 4 days mentioned for provisioning the earth in verse 10, those aren't 4 new days after the first 2.
Ah, okay.
Instead, that 4 days represents the total time spent on developing the earth, which logically includes the first 2 days when it was initially formed.
Okay, I think I see. So the 4-day period is the whole Earth-related project duration, starting from day 1.
Precisely. It contains the initial 2 days within it.
That makes the math work, definitely. But doesn't it feel a little bit like forcing the interpretation? I mean, the way it's written, say, do you disbelieve in him who created the earth in 2 days? And then right after, it talks about the 4 days for provisioning. It sounds sequential.
That's a fair point and a common question. Scholars explain it by pointing to the, let's say, the literary style of the Quran and the context. It's not meant to be read like a modern scientific report or a simple ledger. It's a declaration of God's power and actions.
So the emphasis might be on the components of creation rather than a strict day-by-day timeline.
Exactly. If we apply this classical cumulative model, the timeline fits perfectly into the 6 days mentioned elsewhere. Let's break it down that way.
Okay, let's try. Days 1 and 2 are
initial creation of the earth, the basic formation.
Got it. Then the next phase, the provisioning, mountains, sustenance, that takes place within the first 4 days total.
Correct. So it takes an additional 2 days, let's say days 3 and 4, to complete the Earth's preparation. That makes the total time dedicated to the Earth's full development 4 days, days 1 through 4.
Right, so 2 initial plus 2 more for development. It feels 4 total for Earth.
Oh, and heavens.
Then the final stage, the creation of the 7 heavens, happens on days 5 and 6.
Ah, okay, so 4 days total for Earth, overlapping, plus 2 days for the heavens. That equals 6 days.
Exactly 6 days. It aligns perfectly.
So the phrasing difference in Fusilat isn't an error. It's maybe highlighting the distinct phases and the total time dedicated to the Earth part.
That's how it's traditionally understood. Some scholars use an analogy, like saying you traveled to Baghdad, which took 10 days. Then you continued, and the whole journey to Kufa took 15 days.
Right. The total trip is 15 days. The first 10 are just part of that longer 15-day journey.
Precisely. That same kind of nested timing is what resolves the apparent 8-day issue in Surah Fusilat. Okay, that makes sense textually. But why structure it this way? What's the deeper theological purpose behind this detailed layered description?
Well, that goes to the heart of the message. It's fundamentally about emphasizing God's absolute power, his divine will, and his complete control over creation. This concept is known as Tawhid, the absolute oneness of God.
So the detail isn't just detail, it's demonstrating purposefulness.
Exactly. It shows the process was deliberate, measured, perfectly planned, and executed, not chaotic or accidental. It underscores that God's creation is orderly and intentional.
And you mentioned the idea of the cosmos being an ayat.
Yes, ayat meaning a sign or a proof. The entire universe in this view is a physical sign pointing directly back to the Creator. Its order, its complexity, its very existence serves as undeniable evidence.
So the creation story, structured this way, sets the stage for understanding God's power and humanity's place within that creation.
Precisely. It frames our existence, it gives context to the purpose of life, which the Quran states elsewhere is primarily worship and recognition of the Creator. The orderly creation is proof number one.
Okay, the internal logic holds up with the overlap explanation. But stepping back a bit, this whole 6-day framework, where does that specific idea come from? Was it unique to the Quran?
That's another important layer. No, the 6-day creation motif wasn't new. It's actually a foundational theme you find across all the Abrahamic faiths, Judaism, Christianity, and Islam.
Right. Genesis in the Bible has a very similar structure.
Unmistakably similar. The parallels are clear. So this 6-period structure for creation was already a known concept.
Which means it must have been circulating in the Arabian Peninsula around the 7th century when the Quran was revealed?
Oh, absolutely. You have to remember, pre-Islamic Arabia wasn't isolated. It was a crossroads for trade, cultures, ideas. There were significant, well-established communities of both Jews and Christians there.
Like the Banu Nadir you mentioned, or the Christians in Najran.
Exactly. So the narratives, the core stories of the Abrahamic tradition, including the idea of the world being created in 6 distinct periods, would have been familiar concepts in that environment, part of the cultural milieu.
But the Quran doesn't just adopt it wholesale, does it? It seems to take that familiar framework but makes a really significant theological adjustment.
A crucial theological distinction, yes. It accepts the 6-day structure, the Sitati Ayam, but it pointedly rejects a key element found in the Genesis account, specifically related to the 7th day.
The idea of God resting.
Precisely. The Quran makes an explicit correction. In Surah Kaf, verse 15.38, it states very clearly, "And we did certainly create the heavens and the earth and what is between them in 6 days, and there touched us no weariness."
No weariness. That's a direct counterpoint to the idea of rest.
It's an incredibly important statement reinforcing Tawhid, that concept of God's absolute oneness and perfection. By saying, "No weariness touched us," the Quran emphasizes God's transcendence. He doesn't operate under human limitations. He doesn't need rest.
So it's stripping away any anthropomorphic ideas, any suggestion that God experiences fatigue like a human creator may.
Exactly. It purifies the concept of God, ensuring he is understood as utterly powerful, limitless, and effortless in his act of creation. It affirms his absolute difference from the creation itself.
Okay, that clarifies the classical perspective and the theological nuances. But now let's bring this into the modern world. How does this 6-day or 6-period narrative mesh with, 21st century science? A universe nearly 14 billion years old doesn't quite fit into 6 literal days.
Right, and this is where the second major layer of interpretation comes in, particularly among modern Muslim scholars. They focus on the meaning of the word yom,
which we translate as day.
Commonly, yes, it means a 24-hour solar day.
All right.
But in classical Arabic, the word yom is actually more flexible. It can also signify an eon, a period, or a stage, basically, a span of time, but one of indeterminate length.
And is there justification for that broader meaning within the Quran itself, or is that an interpretation brought to the text to make it fit science?
That's a key point. The justification comes from the Quran itself. The text uses yom in different ways. For example, in Surah Al-Hajj 22.47, it speaks of a yom that is like 1,000 years of human reckoning.
Okay.
And even more strikingly, in Surah Al-Marish 70.4, it mentions a yom whose measure is 50,000 years.
Wow. Okay, so the text itself uses day to mean vastly different lengths of time.
Precisely. So interpreting the 6 ayam, plural of yom, of creation as 6 vast cosmic eons or stages isn't seen as twisting the text, but as applying a meaning, the word demonstrably carries within the scripture itself.
And this allows for a harmonization with the immense timescales that modern cosmology and geology talk about.
Yes, it provides a powerful framework for that. If Yom means an epoch, then the 6 Hayam can represent major phases in the universe's history.
Do scholars try to map these epochs onto specific scientific stages?
Many do, yes. They look for correlations. For instance, the verse talking about the heavens and the earth were a joined entity and we split them apart, that's 21.3, is often linked to the Big Bang. And references to creation involving smoke, or Dukhan, in 41.11, are sometimes connected to the primordial gas clouds that coalesced into stars and galaxies. Another verse, 51.47, speaking of expanding the heavens, is linked to the expansion of the universe.
So it becomes less about literal days and more about aligning Quranic phases with cosmological phases.
That's the approach. It allows believers to see harmony between their faith and scientific discovery. However, it's also really important to note that most contemporary scholars emphasize something crucial.
Which is?
That the Quran's primary purpose isn't to be a science textbook. Its main goal is theological and spiritual. It's revealing the who behind creation, God, and the why, the purpose of existence, the signs of divine power. It's not necessarily focused on giving a detailed scientific how.
So the goal is awe and reflection, maybe guidance, rather than astrophysics.
You could put it that way, yes. The scientific correlations are seen by many as compatible, even supportive, but secondary to the core theological message about the Creator.
All right, that covers the internal resolutions and the modern interpretations quite well. But we have to address the other side, too. Critics of Islam, or non-believers, they often point to this very issue. What are their main arguments? How do they challenge these interpretations?
They definitely raise significant challenges, often focusing on, well, 3 main areas. The first one goes right back to the numbers game we started with the 2 + 4 + 2 calculation.
They don't buy the overlap explanation?
Generally, no. Critics tend to reject the overlapping periods idea as sort of an ad hoc justification, an apologetic maneuver designed to smooth over a real problem. They argue that the plain reading, the most straightforward interpretation of the Arabic in Fusilat, really does suggest 2 + 4 + 2 = 8.
And for them, that apparent inconsistency points towards
human authorship. They see it as evidence of potential errors or inconsistencies introduced during the text compilation or transmission, rather than flawless divine revelation. The very fact that an explanation is needed is sometimes seen as proof that there's a genuine contradiction to explain away.
Okay, that's the numerical argument. What's the second major challenge they raise?
That revolves around scientific accuracy. Even if you accept the eons interpretation for Yom,
How so?
the sequence described in Surah Fusilat still presents a problem for many. It details the creation and the provisioning of the earth mountains, sustenance either concurrently with or seemingly before the final formation and ordering of the heavens, meaning the stars and galaxies.
So it sounds geocentric, like the Earth came first or was the main focus before the rest of the cosmos was finalized.
That's precisely the criticism. It appears to reflect a geocentric worldview, where Earth is primary. And this clashes fundamentally with modern cosmology.
Because science tells us the universe, the galaxies, the stars, formed billions of years before our solar system and Earth even began to coalesce.
Exactly. So even if you stretch the days into eons, the order presented in Fusilat Earth's detailed setup, seemingly preceding or running parallel to the heavens' formation, appears chronologically incorrect from a modern scientific standpoint.
That's a significant hurdle. What's the third main point critics bring up?
The third point ties back to what we discussed about origins. Critics often view the Quranic creation narrative not as entirely unique revelation, but as an adaptation or borrowing from pre-existing Judeo-Christian lore that was prevalent in the region.
Because the six-day structure is so similar to Genesis.
Right. They argue that if the framework was borrowed, it might have brought along inherent issues or elements that don't fully cohere within the Islamic theological system. For example, adopting the six-day structure but dropping the seventh-day rest rationale, they might see that as evidence of borrowing without fully integrating or reconciling the source material's original logic.
So for critics, this suggests a text influenced by or compiled from existing human traditions and stories, rather than being a completely independent and internally consistent divine message.
That's generally the thrust of the argument, yes. It points towards human processes of compilation and adaptation, influenced by the surrounding cultural and religious environment.
Okay, so let's try and bring all these threads together now. We started with this seemingly simple math problem, 8 days versus 6 days. We saw the classical Islamic resolution, which hinges on understanding those periods in Surah Fussilat as overlapping, not sequential.
Right. The 4 days for the Earth's development includes the initial 2, bringing the total creation timeline neatly back to the 6 days mentioned consistently elsewhere.
Then we move to the modern era, where the interpretation shifts focus to the word yom, understanding it not as a 24-hour day, but as a cosmic eon or stage.
Which allows for reconciliation with the vast time scales revealed by modern science, mapping these eons onto cosmological events like the Big Bang or the formation of galaxies.
And throughout all of this, the core theological message remains paramount, emphasizing God's absolute power, his oneness, tahud, and critically, his complete lack of weariness or need for rest, setting him apart from any anthropomorphic limitations.
Exactly. The rejection of weariness is a key theological marker.
We also acknowledge the critical perspectives, the view that the overlap is apologetics, the scientific challenges regarding the sequence of events, and the argument about borrowing from earlier traditions.
It's important to understand those counter-arguments as well.
Definitely. So, reflecting on all this, it strikes me that resolving this puzzle, whether through the classical overlap or the modern eons, requires going beyond just a surface reading of the text.
That's a very astute observation. Both the theological resolution, the overlapping periods, and the scientific one interpreting Yom as eons rely on a deeper engagement with the text, considering its language, its style, its context, and its overall message, rather than just a literal, superficial calculation.
Which leads to maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to mull over.
Yes.
Given that understanding this specific issue seems to require looking for this deliberate nested detail, this meaning beneath the surface, what other core concepts, maybe in the Quran or other ancient sacred texts, might fundamentally change for us if we consistently approach them through that same lens?
It's a fascinating question. If we assume genre and purpose might involve layers of meaning, not just plain statement of fact, what else might unfold differently? What stands out to you when you think about how a text might intend to be understood beyond just the most obvious surface-level reading? Something definitely worth considering.